The system of management is gone as it is now. There is no need of change.
In dictating his last and final will, Srila Prabhupada gave this as his very first point. In the actual written will, which Tamal Krishna had written up, for some reason he had it included at the end of the second point. But from the audio recording, we know that when Srila Prabhupada began dictating his will, this was the very first point he made. It is also to be noted that he gave it as its own point, standing on its own. It wasn't part of another point. This was the main point he wanted to make in writing his last and formal will. As I said, I had already fully completed my analysis and had reached my conclusion that the GBC was no longer performing the duties and functions as per Srila Prabhupada's instructions. And I had come to the conclusion that this was wrong and that it must be undone, and that by restoring their prescribed duties, that this will resolve not just this issue as how to restore the lost respect of the GBC, but it will resolve or go a long way to resolving all the other major issues facing ISKCON. But up until now, though, my essay was just my conclusions. It was just Ami Atma's idea that the system that Srila Prabhupada had spent 7 years setting up should not have changed. The GBC could dismiss it as my personal conclusion and idea, but once I saw this verbal and written instruction given by His Divine Grace within His last will, it was no longer just Ami Atma's idea. This was Srila Prabhupada's very clear and explicit instruction. He gave it in, we have it in recorded in verbal instruction, and it's written there in his will, that the changes that had occurred to how the GBC managed, those changes should never have occurred in the first place. I then included this within my e-paper, and in fact, I even chose to change the title of the e-paper to that quote. Due to this instruction by Srila Prabhupada, I emphasized that the GBC had no other choice than to undo the changes. And I even wrote that because the GBC was currently not obeying this instruction, it was no longer executing the duties that Srila Prabhupada prescribed to them, at least in my opinion, I told the GBC I considered that this put them in a weak and compromised position. I pointed out that they were in violation of a very important instruction. And in such a weakened and compromised state, I told them that they would not, because they would not be empowered to properly address the other issues facing the society. I advised that once they undo these changes and restore back the prescribed duties that Srila Prabhupada had prescribed to them to perform, that only then would they regain not just their lost respect and credibility, but they will regain their spiritual strength, which will allow them to properly address and resolve all the other major issues facing the society. I advise that once that occurs, then the ISKCON mission will regain its purity and become a real force on the world stage. This was my firm understanding in 1997, and it has not changed, not one bit. I still stand by that assessment 100%. I completed my e-paper and I felt very good about it. From within my heart, I actually felt that Srila Prabhupada himself was very pleased by my work and by my conclusions. In my own, maybe not so humble view, but I had no doubt that my analysis and understanding on this was rock solid. The logic was clear and concise, but I also was quite naive because I was thinking the GBC would reach the same conclusions and would also be pleased with my work. I mean, I was even thinking that the GBC would probably award me with a big, what is that? What? No, not a brownie button. Come on. Brownie button. Come on. I thought they would reward me with a Prabhupada button. Oh, Jai. Jai, that's much better. Jai, thank you. Just see how naive I was.